During girls' night, my wife went live on social media. She didn't know I was standing at the door. I heard her say, "Honestly, I only married him for his business. Now I just wait for him to croak." I stepped in and said, "You might want to read our prenup again. My name's Caleb Rowe, and if you asked me a few months ago what I thought my life would look like at 42, I would have said, simple. Work hard, go fishing on the weekends, maybe fix up an old truck." I wasn't asking for fireworks. I wasn't asking for miracles. I just wanted peace. I grew up right here in Charleston, South Carolina. Hot summers, porch swings, and the smell of salt in the air every time the wind picked up off the harbor. My folks were good people. My dad ran a small construction company, and my mom taught second grade at the local elementary school. I guess you could say work ethic was baked into my bones. By the time I was 30, I owned my own landscaping business. Nothing fancy, just me, a couple of trucks, a few guys who knew how to handle a mower without slicing their toes off. Over the years, it grew. Before I knew it, we were managing half the fancy lawns in Charleston, private estates, country clubs, even a few commercial properties downtown. The thing about success, though, it's funny. You get a little, and suddenly people you haven't heard from in years start crawling out of the woodwork. And the people who do show up, well, you never really know if they're there for you or for what you can give them. I met Brielle at a charity gala. One of those fancy nights where everyone's pretending not to stare at each other over the rims of their wine glasses. She was working the event, one of the girls floating around with trays of champagne, laughing too brightly at jokes that weren't funny. She laughed at mine, though. I remember that. She was beautiful, no denying it. Long chestnut hair, eyes the color of whiskey in the sunlight, a smile that felt like being handed a warm towel after getting caught in the rain. When she looked at me, really looked at me, I forgot about the itch under my starched collar and the fact I'd rather be anywhere else. We talked. We laughed. She told me she'd moved down from Asheville, trying to find herself. Said she was tired of the cold in the mountains and wanted to wake up near the ocean. She made it sound so innocent, so free. I should have known better. I asked her out the next night. Took her to Bowen's Island restaurant. One of those places where the floors are sandy and nobody cares if you're wearing work boots. She loved it. Or at least, she said she did. Things moved fast after that. She moved into my house 6 months later. We got married the following spring, barefoot on the beach while the sun dipped low and painted the sky pink. She cried during the vows. I thought they were real tears. Everyone warned me. My sister, Mara, pulled me aside after the reception, her face tight with worry. "Caleb," she said, low enough so no one else could hear. "Just be careful, okay?" I laughed it off. Told her she was being dramatic. Told her Brielle loved me. Because at the time, I believed it. Life with Brielle was easy, at first. She wanted to redo the house, and I let her. New couches, new dishes, new curtains I didn't even notice until she pointed them out. She hosted parties. She joined yoga classes. She posted endless selfies of us smiling over brunch plates. Meanwhile, I worked. Long hours. Hot days. Paperwork late into the night. She never complained. But she never offered to help, either. I chalked it up to differences. I told myself she wasn't used to hard work, that she needed time to adjust. She'd tell me she was proud of me, kiss my cheek, and climb into our big, soft bed with her phone lit up like a bonfire while I sat downstairs going over invoices. It was lonely, but it was familiar. I didn't question it. Until that night. It was supposed to be girls' night. Brielle told me a week ahead. She was practically bouncing around the kitchen, rattling off all the plans. Sloane's bringing wine. Ivy's making her famous spinach dip, and Nora's bringing that weird board game she won't shut up about, she said, leaning against the counter, twirling a strand of hair. Sounds like a wild night, I said, smiling. You should go out with Mason or something, she said lightly. Give us some space. I didn't think twice about it. I had no problem giving her space. God knows I needed some too. Friday rolled around, and I headed out like planned. Met Mason down at the Barrel House. Had a couple beers and watched the game. Laughed about stupid stuff. It felt good. Normal. Until halfway through the second quarter, I realized I'd left my phone sitting on the kitchen counter. Not a big deal, normally. But Mason's wife was 9 months pregnant, and if she went into labor, Mason needed a way to get a hold of me quickly. So I told him I'd swing back and grab it, no big deal. I drove home slowly, windows down, night air thick with the smell of gardenias blooming along the sidewalk. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw all the girls' cars lined up like ducks. The porch light was on. The front door was ajar. Odd. I pushed it open gently, expecting music or laughter to spill out. Instead, I heard Brielle's voice, sharp and clear, cutting through the air like a blade. I moved quietly, my boots barely making a sound against the hardwood. She was sitting on the couch, glass of wine in hand, phone propped up on the coffee table. She was live streaming. Big bright letters at the top of the screen, live. And then I heard it. Honestly, she said, laughing, I only married him for his business. Now I'm just waiting for him to croak. Like, sooner the better. Someone gasped. Another girl, Sloane, I think, howled with laughter. Brielle took another sip of wine, her legs stretched out luxuriously on the couch. If he kicks it tomorrow, I'm set for life, she said, tilting her head back. The blood drained from my face. My ears rang. I watched, frozen, as strangers' comments flooded the screen. Little hearts and laughing faces floated up like sick confetti. I didn't think so. I didn't plan. I just stepped into the room. The laughter stopped so fast, it was like someone yanked the needle off a record. Brielle's face went pale. Her wine glass wobbled dangerously in her hand. I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I just walked over, picked up her phone, and ended the stream. You might want to read our prenup again, I said, voice calm, dead calm. The kind of calm you only hear before a storm breaks. For a long moment, nobody moved. Sloane coughed into her hand, awkward and nervous. Ivy stared at the floor like she wished it would open up and swallow her whole. Nora was already inching toward the door, clutching her purse like it was a life raft. I didn't even look at them. I kept my eyes on Brielle. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, her face cycling through shock, guilt, anger, panic all flashing across her features in real time. Like watching a storm roll in over the marshes. It was just a joke, she said finally, the words brittle and dry. A joke, I repeated softly. You know how girls are when they drink, she said, attempting a weak laugh. We say stupid stuff. It didn't mean anything. I said nothing, just turned slightly toward the girls, still hovering like deer about to bolt. You should leave, I said. They didn't need to be told twice. They scattered, mumbling apologies no one really meant, heels clicking frantically on the hardwood. When the front door slammed shut, the silence that followed was enormous. Thick, smothering. Brielle hovered near the couch, wine glass still trembling in her hand. She looked younger suddenly. Smaller, like a kid about to get grounded. I wasn't interested in making a scene. I wasn't interested in explanations, or tears, or whatever performance she was gearing up to deliver. I was tired, bone-deep tired. Without a word, I turned and headed for the stairs. Caleb, she called after me, her voice pitching higher, desperate now. Wait, please. I paused, hand on the banister. You married me for the money, I said quietly, still not turning around. And you just told the whole damn internet about it. It was a joke, she insisted, voice cracking. Come on. You know I love you. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the hurt wash over me, letting it burn. When I spoke again, my voice was flat. Final. Go to bed, Brielle. I didn't wait to see if she listened. I climbed the stairs and shut the door behind me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow, lazy circles above me, listening to the faint sounds of Brielle pacing the floor downstairs. Once or twice, I thought I heard her crying. It didn't move me. At some point, I heard her retreat to the guest room and close the door. Good. I got up around dawn, showered, dressed, and drove into town. I didn't have a plan. I just drove. The streets were empty that early, the sidewalks wet with the night's humidity. I ended up parked outside Mr. Brooks' law office without even thinking about it. He wasn't expecting me. He blinked in surprise when I walked in, hair still damp, shirt wrinkled. Caleb, he said, setting down his coffee. Everything all right? I sat down heavily across from him. I want a file, I said. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and pulled out a yellow legal pad. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Brielle moved around the house like a ghost. No more giggling phone calls. No more Instagram selfies of her coffee and croissant. She still cooked sometimes, half-hearted meals she barely touched. I went to work, came home, and ate in silence. At first, she tried to talk to me. Apologies, promises, tears. I didn't respond. After a while, she gave up. One night, I found her sitting at the dining room table, staring blankly at her phone. When she saw me, she straightened up, trying to muster a smile. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. We can fix it. I'll change. For a moment, just a moment, I almost believed her. But then I remembered the sound of her voice, light and mocking, telling the whole world she was just waiting for me to die. I remembered the sound of her friends laughing. I shook my head once, firmly, and went upstairs. She didn't try again after that. The day the papers were served, she wasn't even home. Maybe that was for the best. I packed a duffel bag, threw it in the back of my truck, and drove down to a cheap motel near the water. It smelled like mildew and cheap soap, but it was mine. I sat on the lumpy mattress, staring out the window at the parking lot, and felt lighter. Not happy. Not yet. But lighter. I called Mason. Told him what happened. He let out a low whistle. You all right, man? He asked. Getting there, I said. The divorce went quickly. Thanks to the prenup, there wasn't much to argue over. She tried, of course. Claimed emotional distress. Tried to paint me as controlling, distant. Her lawyer floated the idea that the live stream was a private joke that had been taken out of context. Didn't matter. Mr. Brooks shut it down cold. I had the footage. I had the witnesses. I had every damn receipt. When the final decree came through, Brielle walked away with what she came in with. a closet full of designer shoes, and a handful of Instagram followers who didn't know or didn't care what she'd really done. I found a small place on the edge of town. Nothing fancy. One-story bungalow, paint peeling a little around the windows, yard overgrown. It needed work. A lot of it. But it was mine. I spent my weekends pulling weeds, patching the roof, fixing the creaky porch swing. At night, I sat out there with a cold beer and watched the sun sink into the marsh, the sky bleeding red and gold. It was quiet. Peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't trying to make someone happy who didn't even like me. I was just living. I didn't hear from Brielle for a while after the divorce finalized. Weeks passed. The weather turned hotter, stickier, the kind of southern summer heat that makes the pavement shimmer. I buried myself in work. Took on extra jobs. Hired a few new guys. Expanded the business into 2 neighboring counties. Every night, I come home sore, dirty, and tired in that good way that lets you sleep hard and dreamless. But of course, peace never lasts forever. One evening in early August, I came back from a late landscaping job, boots heavy with mud, shirt clinging to my back, and found her sitting on my front steps. Brielle, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my truck, makeup smudged, hair a tangled mess around her shoulders. She looked wrecked. A different kind of wreck. Not drunk. Not high. Just lost. I stood there a long minute, staring at her. She looked up, eyes glassy. "Hey," she said, voice small. I didn't say anything. Just set my toolbox down on the porch and waited. She trailed off, fiddling with the strap of her purse. I didn't know where else to go. "You're not supposed to be here," I said, keeping my voice even. "I know," she whispered. The porch light buzzed overhead. A mosquito whined in my ear. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. Brielle shifted on the step, pulling her knees up to her chest like a little girl. "I made a mistake," she said, almost inaudible. "A big one." I leaned against the porch rail, crossing my arms. "Which one?" I asked quietly. Her face crumpled. "I thought I could find someone better," she said. "Someone richer, younger, whatever. I thought I deserved more." I let that sink in. At least she was being honest now, if nothing else. "But nobody else wanted me," she continued, voice shaking. "Once they found out what I did, nobody wanted to touch me. I didn't move, didn't speak. I lost everything, Caleb," she said, looking up at me, desperate. "The apartment, the friends, the deals. My family barely talks to me. I'm living with a girl I barely know, sleeping on her couch." The bitterness in her voice was sharp. She wasn't sorry because she loved me. She was sorry because karma had finally caught up to her. I pushed off the railing and reached for the doorknob. "You made your choice," I said simply. Her eyes widened, filling with tears. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. I stood there for a long time, forehead resting against the wood, listening to her soft, broken sobs on the other side. I didn't open the door again. Word got around town faster than I expected. Charleston's big enough that you don't know everybody's business, but small enough that juicy stories travel fast. It wasn't long before friends, clients, even old classmates started reaching out. Some of the messages were sympathetic. Some were nosy. A few were just plain cruel. Mason showed up one night with a 6-pack and 2 fishing rods. No words needed. We drove down to the pier at Folly Beach, cast our lines out into the dark, and sat there drinking warm beer and watching the tide roll in. At one point, Mason turned to me. "You good?" he asked. I thought about it. Really thought. "I'm getting there," I said. He nodded once, and that was the end of it. Fall crept slowly and sweetly. The air got cooler. The marsh grass turned from green to gold. I spent more time outdoors, fixing up the house. Built a new porch swing. Sanded down the old fence. Life settled into a quiet rhythm. Some nights were harder than others. Sometimes I caught myself reaching for my phone, thinking about texting Brielle. Not because I missed her, but because habit is a HLL of a thing. I didn't text her, though. Not once. Instead, I picked up other old habits I'd let die over the years. I started reading again. Fishing on weekends. Volunteering at the local animal shelter. It was at the shelter that I met Sadie. She wasn't anything like Brielle. No flashy dresses. No manicured nails. Sadie wore scuffed boots, jeans, and flannel shirts. She laughed easily, without that edge of desperation I'd gotten so used to hearing. The first time we talked, I was trying, and failing, to wrangle a squirmy black lab named Gus into a leash. Sadie walked over, took the leash from my hands, and in 2 seconds flat, had Gus sitting obediently at her feet, wagging his tail. "You gotta be quicker than them," she said, grinning. I laughed real and sudden and felt something loosen in my chest. Over the next few weeks, we bumped into each other more and more. Always easy. Always natural. One evening, while cleaning out the shelter kennels, she glanced over at me. "Have you ever thought about getting a dog?" she asked casually. I shrugged. "Thought about it," I said. "Never really had time." "You got time now," she said, smiling. I looked at her, at the easy way she handled herself, the smudge of dirt on her cheek she hadn't noticed. And for the first time in what felt like years, I realized she was right. I did have time now. And maybe, just maybe, I had a HLL of a lot more than that. As the weeks slipped into months, life started to feel different. Lighter. Not perfect, but real. Sadie and I grew closer. There was no rush, no pressure. Sometimes we'd meet for coffee after a shift at the shelter. Other times we'd just sit by the water, talking about everything and nothing. It felt good. Easy in a way I'd forgotten was even possible. Meanwhile, Brielle stayed quiet. For a while. Then, like a bad penny, she turned up again. It started small. A text message one morning. Just a simple hey. I ignored it. Then a voicemail. Her voice was syrupy sweet, asking if we could talk. I deleted it without listening to the end. Next came the letters, handwritten, messy, pages and pages of apologies. Promises. Begging. She wrote about how miserable she was. How sorry. How she knew she'd messed up, but she wanted another chance. How she believed we could find our way back to what we had. I didn't respond. Each time I threw a letter away, I felt a little stronger. But Brielle was never the type to accept defeat quietly. When the apology tour didn't work, she switched tactics. One afternoon, I came home to find a glossy real estate brochure jammed in my mailbox. My old house, the one Brielle had fought tooth and nail to get her hands on, was listed for sale. At a laughably high price. And just under the listing, her name. She had gotten her real estate license. I laughed out loud standing there in the driveway, holding the brochure in one hand. Of course she did. Of course she was trying to make a name for herself, selling off pieces of the life she'd thrown away. Part of me wanted to let it go, just shake my head and move on. But another part of me remembered every late night working to pay for that house, every broken promise, every live-streamed insult, decided maybe it was time Brielle learned a lesson the universe wasn't teaching fast enough. I made a few calls. Turns out, real estate in Charleston is a small world. Especially when you're someone like me, someone who spent 20 years making connections with homeowners, business owners, contractors, and city officials. I didn't have to spread rumors. I didn't have to lie. All I had to do was quietly, calmly, tell the truth. That Brielle Rowe had once publicly admitted to marrying for money. That she had joked about waiting for her husband to die. That she had been caught on a live stream saying things that made the rounds faster than a summer storm. In a town like Charleston, where old money and reputation still mean everything, that truth spread like wildfire. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was just unstoppable. Within a month, Brielle's name became mud. Clients canceled meetings. Deals fell through. Her flashy Instagram posts dried up, replaced with half-hearted motivational quotes and desperate marketing videos no one watched. One evening, while Sadie and I were sitting on my porch sharing a pizza, I spotted Brielle driving by. Same car, same sunglasses perched on her head, but the expression on her face? Pure bitterness. She slowed down when she saw me. For a second, I thought she might stop. But then she caught sight of Sadie laughing next to me, tossing a crust to the dog curled at our feet, and Brielle's mouth twisted. She hit the gas and sped off without a word. I didn't move, didn't wave. I just took another bite of pizza and smiled. Some nights I still thought about everything that happened. Not in a sad way. More like flipping through an old photo album of a place I didn't live anymore. I felt sorry for the man I used to be, so desperate to be loved, so blind to the red flags waving in front of his face. But I wasn't that man anymore. I've learned not to harden my heart, not to close off, but to see clearly, to choose better. And when I looked over at Sadie laughing, real, honest, I knew I had. The best revenge isn't anger. It's not screaming or slamming doors. It's not tearing someone down. It's living better. It's building a life so good, so peaceful, so full of genuine love and laughter, that the people who wronged you can do nothing but watch from the outside, realizing they can't touch you anymore. And that's exactly what I did. I built a life Brielle could never poison again. A life she wasn't even a footnote in anymore. Just a lesson, a warning, a ghost. And that was more satisfying than any revenge I could have ever planned. It's been almost 2 years since that night. Sometimes, when I'm sitting on the porch with a cold drink in hand and Sadie's head resting on my shoulder, I think about how close I came to wasting my whole life on someone who didn't even like me, let alone love me. I don't feel anger anymore when I think about Brielle. Not sadness either. Mostly, I feel grateful. She showed me what love isn't. And because of that, I finally understood what love is. It's a shared laugh over something stupid at the end of a long day. It's someone picking up the slack when you're bone tired. It's trusting the person next to you without having to second-guess every smile, every word. It's peaceful, real peace. And if you asked me now what my life looks like at 42, I'd tell you, better than I ever imagined. No fireworks, no miracles, just quiet mornings, honest work, good people, and a heart that's finally at home.